I'm Michelle,
And I'm Catherine,
and we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human podcast.
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down. Welcome back. I'm excited about talking about the spoke on the wheel today called Relationally Thriving.
Yes.
It's very,
I enjoy
big.
this one.
I mean, I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert, so
Right.
I want all of my relationships to thrive, and that is not reality. So
It is not.
This is a really healthy episode to discuss. But let's go ahead and define what we mean on the wheel for what relationally thriving means for this purpose.
That's right. So this is how I define it. Relationally thriving means that we are experiencing fulfilling connections with others that we value, where we have the willingness to invest time and energy that contributes to a mutual respect and attachment.
Okay, that is packed full of
A lot of words.
not just words, but like even starting at the beginning,
Layers
layers, relationships that we value.
that we value.
Right? There are a lot of relationships in our lives, and how to determine which ones that we value, and then that we have to put time and energy into, and there needs to be mutual respect and attachment. So
right.
I think we're going to get into those three aspects, but this one, sometimes I ask you, why is this on the wheel? I think this one makes a lot of sense as to why it should be one of the spokes, but go ahead and explain how.
Well, this one's on the wheel because for me, mental, emotional, and relational are the aspects of our life that have to be healthy for us to feel like we're living a good life, that we have a quality of life. When one of those areas, mental, emotional, or relational, is off, it's a burden. It's a real burden to us. So we need to be able to evaluate our relational status so that we can assess our investment. And what I mean by that is I wanted to create a way for people to be able to look at all of their relationships, not just your partner or spouse, but your parents, your friends, the ones that you can say, yeah, they are of value to me, that person. And I need to be able to assess how it's going and what level of investment I want to put in or that I need to put into it, because we've all been in relationships a lot of times with family members that we would say our family, I think, maybe not everybody, but family members hold value simply because we're related to them. But oftentimes we have to evaluate, that person I'm related to really doesn't put a lot of time and effort into connecting with me. So I need to assess my level of investment of what I'm putting into that relationship to connect with them.
Whether it's family or sometimes work.
That's right.
Or friendships.
Any relationship.
Any relationship. I was using this analogy the other day that I refer to it as bank deposits.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had this in my life in the past. I think many of us have, where we're investing, and then something will happen and we need to make a withdrawal from that relationship, and come to find there's nothing there's no
account,
reserve.
right?
There's nothing in the account. Mm-hmm. And what I thought was a mutual relationship was very one-sided. And that is a very hard pill to swallow when you realize that. And over time begin to identify the markers of what made that relationship not mutual, a mutual balance, and made me reevaluate time and effort. How do you show up for somebody that's not as invested in you as you are in them? And what does that look like? And what happens when that's a serious relationship, like a family one where you're going to have to see each other, or if it's somebody you work with every day, or a person that's in your community, whether it's a neighbor, a house of worship, there's some tricky things.
That's right.
Let's talk about more ways that we identify the relationships we want to invest in.
So it's really important for us to shine a light on this truth, or it's something I believe very deeply in. We all deserve to be in mutually valued relationships. Every human being, even if you're an introvert, an extreme introvert, you were in relationships. Everybody is in relationships, and they don't all have to be thriving, and that's good and fine, and they shouldn't be, because we don't have the capacity for it. But we all deserve to be in relationships where we know we are valued. It's one of our greatest human needs. I know I am valued by another person, by a few other people. That is a human need that we have to have, and so we have to be able to kind of assess, where's the health of this relationship? And so the aspects of that, which is what you're asking, relationally thriving, the way I define it, looks like free expression. Emotionally, our thoughts. That doesn't mean that we just get to walk around unfiltered, but that I know I get to be who I am with my own thoughts and feelings, and I'm not going to get attacked. I'm not going to get ostracized. I'm not going to get bullied. There's an element of free expression that should be a key player in a relationship that we value and where we know we are getting it back.
Can I add one thing? And this has become a conversation I've been having over and over again recently. The mutual gaze. And the aspect of when you're in a relationship, you say something to someone and you see they reflect back to you their feelings or thoughts on how you spoke, what you were saying. And sometimes we may say things that are not appropriate or off the wall, or, should be corrected. And when you are in a thriving relationship, there is that space to be reflected back and to see the response. Not to date ourselves, but there's a TikTok trend right now that they're doing with small children, where you're given the dad and the mom and the 2 or 3 year old are given covered plates, and the child has 2 cookies on the plate, and one of the parents has 1 cookie and the other parent doesn't have any.
And to see what the child wants to do.
And to see if the child will share the cookie. It is hilarious and fascinating. But over and over again, when it is revealed that one of the plates is empty, the child will look up at the face of that parent to see how they're going to react. And it just keeps emphasizing the importance of mirroring back and forth to each other how we feel about things.
Yeah.
When I've been in a relationship that maybe I've overstepped, or I've said something that hurt a friend or that encouraged them, and we're able to talk about it and we're able to celebrate it if it's good, I'm able to apologize and learn from that experience. That mutual gaze has been beneficial for all the other relationships in my life are benefited by a strong, healthy, thriving relationship with the mutual gaze. And I feel like in our society, when so much is done through online, almost anonymous
AI, Yeah.
you do not see.
You're not getting a mutual gaze.
You're not getting that.
You and I talk about this pretty frequently in different different situations and scenarios. And mutual gaze is the mirror that we should have in relationships. And for me, it became very apparent getting married. And that I realized as a single person that when I got married, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this mirror around now. And that's a good thing. I know there's probably wives or husbands out there thinking, oh, I wish it would not be around as much, or I would like to not look in the mirror too often. But then children is where I felt like my mirror got bigger, because as a parent and your children, you realize, oh my gosh, I am more selfish than I ever thought. And I think you hear so much as mothers were so giving and sacrificial, and that was the tape that would play in my mind is mothers are supposed to be so sacrificial, and I would think I am really selfish because I do not want to get up on Saturday morning really early. It's things like that where you realize, and it's that mirror or the mutual gaze, leaving a party. And one spouse says, hey, you said that to that person, and I don't know if they maybe heard it that way. We may not like it. We may not like to get in the car and hear that from from our mutual gaze person, but we need it because it's the thing that makes us think, oh, did I come across that way? Or was that, I love that term, mutual gaze. It's better than mirror.
It keeps coming up in things I'm hearing lately, and it's such a vital part of our development. And that trend, it was so apparent to me. And when you're in, this is another point about relationally thriving relationships, you're with someone who wants you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't critical and chew you apart when you're not the best version of yourself, but they are rooting for you to be the best. And so they
want the best. They want you to be your better self.
They'll pull you aside and say to you, "Hey, that was not your best day.
That wasn't your best."
Reminds me of a great children's book where I could go down this rabbit hole, but where the adult offers compassion to the child that had been just rude and direct, and just said, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a better day.
Yes. And
that don't dwell, move on, bring it forward. And that to me is another hallmark of a thriving relationship is you have hard conversations, but it's for the betterment of each other.
Yes. So another attribute of a healthy relationship, regardless of who it's with, is that there's active listening. So offering support when we're listening. But I want to move on to a couple of the others, which is healthy fences. This is a big one for me because the word boundaries is so big, and if I told you how many books there are that have boundaries in the title, it's ridiculous. And as a society, we kind of we all know this, we latch on to words until it's ad nauseum. You're like, stop. My other one that kind of gets me is organic, because everything became organic.
Engagement.
Right? I do like that one though. So I don't love boundaries for a reason, because as a therapist, and it was therapy, I think it was my industry who created the whole word of you need boundaries. And look, I'm not saying people don't need boundaries, but to me, a boundary is a wall. It is a thick, I think of England or Scotland with their rock walls and their things they put around their castles. To me, that's
a fortress.
Yeah, it's a clear boundary. To me, is just this real clear, like, you can't cross here. And so I love the term fences. And the reason I like that is because I don't feel like in our relationships that we value most, that we need these strong fortresses as often as I think we hear we do. Like, you have toxic parents, put up that boundary. I just feel like we kind of go to this extreme as a society with these words and what it means in relationships. Now, I am not saying there is never a time for that. There obviously is. There can be abuse and things like that. For sure. I'm a big proponent of that. But in general, with our relationships, we need fences, and we need that even with really good, healthy, like, hey, this fence is here. And oftentimes fences you can see through. There's usually a gate for opening. We can pass, but we just say, hey, this is where my lines are, or this is where I can go up to with you in this conversation, in this activity, whatever it is. But I feel like healthy fences are accepted and we know where they are. That is, and it's mutual. That is going to be something that is evident in a thriving relationship that we value as a healthy fence. This kind of goes along with it, is navigating conflict. when we have relationships where we feel like conflict isn't allowed. To me, that's not a healthy relationship. If conflict isn't allowed, because conflict means they're going to cut me off, or we're not going to be speaking, or they're going to go weeks or months without talking because I disagreed with them, or if I tell them they did something that hurt my feelings, that's not a healthy. There should be lots of room for us to navigate conflict. And I'm a big believer that friction actually creates a stronger bond. A little bit of friction, not constant friction, but if we have to work through something, usually we feel a little closer because it creates this sense of security of, hey, I know we kind of worked through that. We're good.
Wow, I had never thought of friction as creating a sense of security in that regard with relationships, but you're right. You've tackled a hard subject. You've been honest. You've been vulnerable, and
We made it through.
And sometimes you found you're more on the same page than you thought you were.
Well, you build trust too, because that person, I've had couples sit and say, we never fight. This happened early in my career. A couple, we never fight. And I think they wanted to be like, hey, I have a plate of cookies. Yay for you. In my mind, I thought, oh, this is going to be good. Because if they're not ever fighting, and fighting can look a bunch of different ways, you're not really getting to things.
There's no conflict.
Yeah, there's no conflict. I'm not saying you need to be throwing stuff and yelling and screaming, but there should be we're not the same people. You don't marry your exact same person. So if you're not having some sort of conflict, I don't know if we're being really truly ourselves.
That is going to lead into some other conversations probably, because I keep thinking about personalities and they're conflict avoidant, or some people just are that way more extreme. And that can be detrimental to thriving relationships.
Of course, absolutely.
The other one that you have talked about, we briefly mentioned it, is where you want to spend your time and energy and being intentional with your time. And I have seen, I think that sometimes we get lazy we just start to assume the relationship is there and it's okay. And it's not fresh. And typically what I found is one person is more aware of that or another one than the other one. And let's talk about what that means for investing in time with people or being intentional with our time.
I think it's important for us to be able to assess if there's one person in the relationship doing a lot of the pursuing or the initiating. And you and I've talked about this because extroverts and extroverts tend to be the pursuers or the initiators. Hey, let's go do this. And introverts tend to like that. They're not, by nature, aren't going to be the, hey, I heard about this thing where there's a lot of people, let's go. They're not generally coming up with those ideas, but they do like it when an extrovert says you want to come. So I don't really mean that. I mean, you feel when you're starting to sense, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the deposits into the bank account using your analogy. But when I go to show up to get something out, they're not there, or they don't have it. They can't meet me where I'm at. Or it's a, hey, can I give you a call back later? Or let's get together next week. Let me know, when's good for you. And you do, and then you don't hear back. Like it's the mutual, you need to have a sense of mutual investment. Sometimes though, because of life, we can't be balanced in that. I don't love that word anyways, but we can give grace. I think about your friend that was going to nursing school. And you probably had to put a little more investment in that during her time of study. But there was this understanding that she's in school and I can do that. I'm not in school. And she has, she was grown and married. And this wasn't college. This was like just a few years ago. So it's not going to be balanced all the time, but and we can give grace to what kind of investment they are able to bring, and being able to see that, though, is what's important.
So there's also a flip side of this. So we talk about the double-sided coin of self-mastery and self-awareness.
That's right.
And one of the aspects for the spoke on the wheel for a personal assessment is to ask yourself, are you investing in the value? Are you putting enough time in to the relationships that you value the most? I mean, as an extrovert, and I get this from my mother's phrase was, I always want to leave them smiling. So she'd always try to crack a joke or brighten somebody's day, whether
that's a great motto.
Every person that she met.
Yeah.
And she and I feel like we're in relationship. Like, we know the name of the lady that we always go through in the checkout line, or the dry cleaner, or the person at church. And we call that a relationship.
That's right.
But one of the important parts of using the wheel, using this, is to say, am I putting enough time in?
That's right.
Not just like, maybe the deficit is my fault, and to slow ourselves down and to say, who needs me? Maybe we're giving too much time outside of the people that we value the most. And sometimes that is that you're putting a magnifying glass on, maybe there's a bigger problem in the relationship that we need to have a hard conversation, or we need to examine why we're avoiding the people that we do value the most. I think it's easier to write down a list of who are the most important people in your in your life. And we might list family members or people that we mentally know, and then say, how much time do you spend with them every day? Or how much time do you invest in them? Time do you invest in them? And we'll realize sometimes they get the least of us.
That's right.
And that is that's that coin, that's self-awareness, to ask ourselves, like the empowering questions we talked about last time. Why? Just to bring clarity, not necessarily a solution, because sometimes just knowing is the awareness we need.
That's right. That's a really, I love that you brought that up, because that's a very good point, that we can't always be, I think we become a little bit self-focused in relationships, because it's, why aren't they doing this for me? Instead of, it's important. That's a great point, Catherine, to say sometimes we need to say, what am I doing for them? How am I showing up for them? And I say that I value them. That's really good. I think we want to go ahead and jump to, why is this important for work, right?
What does it look like at work to be relationally thriving?
So first of all, this is very important at work, because I think as a manager, as a leader, as an employer, we need to understand that people need the resources. It's not a work environment's job to fix your relationships. But I do believe we have a responsibility as employers to provide the resources to help people assess and take care of their relationships that they value outside of work. Because if it's not going well for them, the people they value most, they are bringing that to work. They're bringing that burden into work. And so it's really important. I want to frame this, though, also in work connections.
Yeah, because you're there.
You're there a
There
long
is a
time.
social game at work, and if you're not great at playing it, sometimes you don't get promoted.
That's right.
Sometimes you need an ally. You need to know who your allies are. We're going to talk about that a little later, but this, I've been blindsided by relationships at work that I thought were beneficially valued, and I felt I ended up being a pawn, or
Yeah, that's not good.
No, or I ended up feeling, something would happen and maybe they didn't have my best interest. And this is something that we need to evaluate and decide which relationships are the ones I want to put time and investment into. And because
work relationships are important. And they offer a lot of value, but we should approach them carefully, and we should approach them and find out the attributes should still be the same, but in a professional way. The same attributes of healthy fences and navigating conflict, the things we just talked about, free expression and active listening, intentionality, all of those aspects should be there and present in our relationships that we value at work, but we have to put the filter of being professional over the top of them.
There's one phrase that you use about support, and this is very important for the relationship of leader to subordinate or team member. And you say support should be thrown around
Like confetti.
like confetti.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're a leader, I feel like the onus is on you to be the one that is the healthiest part of that relationship, to give the person to be to know that they can come to you with their problems, to listen to what they have, to reflect back where, to pull them aside and say, have the hard conversation.
Yeah.
And if support is being thrown around like confetti, then you build a place of trust. There's respect, and you can actually create an environment where your employees can thrive and feel like they have a healthy relationship with their boss.
That's right.
I think
I think you will see it reflected back to you. Your employees, the people you are leading, will say, gosh, you did such a great job in helping me see a different scenario for that solution. They will give you what you would like to hear and how that you're doing well. They will reflect it back to you.
I think I've talked about before about the big event that I was responsible for with my company, and I still remember my CEO was never sat still, always had a project he was working on. And one day he said, all right, come in my office. And he went to his small table and sat down and gave me the opportunity to download everything about that successful event, and just gave me 30 minutes where I could say whatever I wanted and talk about it and listen to me and focus on me, and allowed me this. It was the only time he did it. And I still remember how much I needed that, and I enjoyed that. And he knew me. He knew that I needed to download that. And he was notorious for wanting to jump into the next project and not celebrating the win. And that meant so much to me.
That's important, yeah.
To have that support, to celebrate that win, to have that focus time. And it builds trust, it builds community. And you know what? The next time I wanted to perform or produce a product that was highly successful.
Oh, yeah.
You get a lot more out of the employees. They want to work in a thriving environment. So if you want to hear more about this topic, because we could talk about it for a lot. You know me, I can come up with 14 more personal stories about this. But what is a book that you might suggest for anybody who wanted to do a deeper dive?
So one of my favorite books, and he's one of my favorite authors, is Bob Goff. And I picked Love Does for this episode because I think it dives into how to build good, incredible relationships. And what does he say? Discover secretly incredible life in an ordinary world. But he talks about how do we do relationships well. So that's the one I brought for today. And, for our listeners, if you are still interested in looking at the wheel or getting your copy of it, here it is. Go to foxygenconsulting.com and reach out to us, and we'll get you a copy of the wheel for yourself so you can follow along. Thanks for joining us today.
Have a great day.
The Healthy Hurried Human podcast is presented by Foxygen Consulting. At Foxygen, we provide business and performance psychology and consulting. We believe healthier people make a healthier workplace. Foxygen Consulting, breathing new life into your organization.